Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 6, 2024. Before we go onto the agenda, does anybody have any announcements that they would like to share?
Just one thing. We are going to
Ulysses
release
nomination
Node.js.
has passed. Sorry, good. Yeah, go ahead, Rafael. I'm going. Okay. So Ulysses nomination has passed. So Ulysses is now Node.js collaborator, and I think Michael and I are having a onboarding session later today.
Yep.
So yeah, congrats to him.
Yeah, I'll add a big plus one. Ulysses has done a lot of great work in the build working group and security working group and other places, so it's great to see him come on as a collaborator as well.
Yeah, and the other announcement is the release of Node.js 21.7.0 that I'm going to promote it right after this meeting.
For which one was that? Node.js
21.7.0.
70. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Actually, I have a question on this since people keep asking on GitHub about it. When is happening the next 20 release instead? Please fix that to the next auto selection.
So it should be late. Well, I am planning to do one later this month. I am waiting for this Node 21 release to come out because there's some things in the Node 21 release I want to backport to Node 20. Specifically, there's an npm regression with signal handling to child processes that I want to pick up a later npm into Node 20. There are some backport PRs which I'm hoping to land as well, which are currently open. One of them is to backport a libuv fix for Windows, which has been, a lot of people have been complaining about it for months. Just for everyone's awareness here, we cannot at the moment backport libuv versions newer than 147 and later to Node 20 because we found during the security release that libuv dropped support for macOS versions earlier than 11 in upstream libuv, and Node 20 still targets macOS 10.15. So we actually ran into problems with the last security release where we were trying to update libuv and had test failures on macOS. So that is unfortunate. So I'm trying to cherry pick a particular fix there. But yeah, just in case people are wondering if there are other things in libuv that aren't in, they want new releases of libuv in Node 20. We are currently sort of stuck there. We can either float patches or see if we can negotiate with libuv about sort of bringing back that support. So it was tricky macOS support because Apple drop support for things without really announcing it. So we're always playing a guessing game as to how far back we support, but we tend to prefer not to change nodes. If we GA, if we release a node December major and it say this will run on macOS, say that for Node 20 it runs on macOS 10.15. We normally try not to change that unless we're sort of forced to. There's particular reasons that Apple forces to, for example, upgrade Xcode or something in a way that means that we can't, support that. Then we'll be forced to go. But traditionally, unless we don't have to, we don't. So
it's really a breaking change, right? So
well, yes, I mean it would mean if you were still running macOS 10.15, if we bump that minimum target, you'd no longer be able to run Node on it. So yeah, for libuv, their current versions of they're macOS 11 and above, but that does mean a challenge for us if we ever want to backport things to earlier release lines.
I have two questions on this actually, on this follow-up. So for my original question, okay, I will not end of the month roughly. But on this one, I have two questions. Are we gonna make an announcement for this limitation that doesn't really depends on us in a way? And second, do we still have people on 10.15 eventually on macOS 10.15?
I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if that comes out in the download figures or if they're scrubbed. We just generally don't try and cut. So we have a support statement that says that we only support operating systems that are in support, but we tend to not physically deliberately cut people off. So I know there've been complaints in the past on Windows, for example, where I think we do have some version checks that actually stop Node running on older versions of Windows. But that only tends to happen on some of the major boundaries, but not during releases normally. So part of the big challenge we have in build for like releases, like Node 22 is coming up. One of the things we try and do is try and set like the minimum compatible like glibc versions or Mac OS versions in a way that we think we may still be able to support in like 3 years time. When the long-term support releases of Node last a long time. So we try and do that as far as possible. I mean, if things happen that force our hand, so be it. But we've consciously tried as far as possible to keep the compatibility as it was when it sort of went out on the version .00.
I see. I totally understand.
The libuv thing with Node 20, I don't think we need to publicly announce that specifically, because it's more a sort of implementation detail for us. We can choose the backport patches from upstream libuv. We generally have avoided that, but doing floating patches, because our dependency upgrade process usually would wipe all floating patches, but we have actually disabled the libuv update process because we're patching libuv anyway due to one of the security vulnerabilities. I think it was the set UID one, or one of them. We are patching libuv with our own patch that is something that's not in upstream libuv. So we have disabled the automatic version updates anyway.
Like Richard's not saying we've been forced to drop 15. He's instead doing backports to avoid that. So like I could see us announcing if we ever were forced into that, like, oh, there is actually a Semver breaking, like there actually is a breaking change in this patch, but like we're not there.
I specifically mention it because we have had a lot of issues opened about a specific Windows regression with file names that I think was towards the end of last year. So it's been a good few months where people have been looking for this to be backported back into Node 20, and the fix for that has unfortunately gone out in libuv 147, and we can't move Node 20 to that easily. So yeah.
Well, the thing is that the only reason why I think that but actually not in the short future, in the long future, eventually, we might need an announcement is if we start piling up updates that we cannot backport due to the missing libuv. Eventually, might never happen. I'm just saying, since it's an LTS version, right? Then eventually we might have to make an announcement. So far, we are good, probably for now, but maybe on the long run,
I think for now we will keep an eye on the issue tracker, and if people are asking for fixes and those fixes are in the newer versions of libuv, then we'll have to make a decision, probably in the release team, or maybe in the release team with the conjunction with the wider with the TSC about what do we do with the libuv situation, because like I said, we do have the option possibly to do backports. I mean, it may end up that backports become impossible because it may rely on things that are only in Mac OS 11 and later. I mean, that was one of the challenges we had, I think, with the there was some specific sort of API that's now being used in libuv that isn't in the earlier versions of Mac OS. So that's part of the reason. So yeah, I think we at the moment we'll see how it goes. We'll see if it becomes untenable. I think that's the way to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, that took a bit longer than quick announcements.
Okay, any other announcements that people have that they'd like to share? Okay, so let's move on to the CPC and board meeting updates. I don't have any updates to share, except that I don't know if everybody was here. Last meeting, we did agree that we were going to start inviting Joe as the CPC chair. He's also one of our CPC representatives from the project to the meeting. I unfortunately just haven't had time to PR him into the invite yet, but we'll do that. So hopefully next time he can give us a more in-depth update. So I'm just going to put no update this week. So we have then 2 issues on the agenda. The docs state that removing NPM is a non-goal, and build enable yarn and NPM core pack binders by default. That there has been the ask that we defer the discussion on those 2 until next week. because some people who want to be involved are not here. I think we have agreed that Jeffrey and Antoine are just going to give a very short summary of where we're at. And discussion can continue in the issue until next week. So I don't know, Antoine, do you want to start off with that, and then we'll go to Jeffrey?
Sure. So Corpac is a package manager, version manager that has been distributed with Node.js for a few years now. And so I opened a PR to distribute yarn and PNPM binaries, which uses Corpac. I think that's the broad thing. And yeah, the PR is open. If you want to give objections, read the context over there. Maybe Geoffrey, you want to outline something in particular?
Do you want to explain what the status quo is about enabling Corpac?
Well, so currently Corpac is not enabled. Yes, that's the status quo.
So, like we've been shipping Corpac, but users have to run a command Corpac enable, and when they run that command, it adds symlinks to their path for yarn and PNPM. That symlink to Corpac, and then Corpac. Correct me if I'm wrong, Antoine, but it essentially downloads the correct version. Like if there's a package.json that says what version to download, it'll download that version. Otherwise, I think it'll just download the latest, and then runs it to run whatever command the user had passed. Is that correct so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the PR basically makes that Corpac enable step unnecessary, because just installing Node itself, just as we create symlinks for Node, npm, npx, I don't know what else, Node JIP maybe, I don't know. It would also create symlinks for yarn and PNPM. So there were various objections to this. I'll try to summarize them in neutral terms. I guess I could start with my own. My objections were a few things. One, that we don't have much documentation about any of this, like about which package managers we plan to support, why those, why not others, what's the governance around deciding what package managers, what's the governance around what we want to be the commands that Node adds to the path. Like none of that's been worked out. There's no documentation around what goals we want Corpac to achieve. Like, do we want to be shipping a version manager, or was the goal just to create a way to install these things or make them appear to be installed? So that's I think the summary of the documentation policy objections. I had another objection around UX, in that from the user's perspective, Corpac doesn't support npm, or vice versa. npm doesn't support the package.json field that Corpac defines. And so I reached out to the npm team to see if they would be interested in standardizing on this, and they are. And they suggested opening an issue in there's an OpenJS package something collab space repo. And so I opened an issue there. I consolidated a bunch of feedback from the various Corpac threads and drafted a spec of a new field called dev engines. And we had a meeting about it yesterday, and they're fully on board. Luke and Gar is, I think, the tech lead, and Luke is the main developer on npm. Luke is going to implement a PR for it. Jordan already implemented a draft PR, so there's already something for him to start with. So that should happen fairly quickly. And then if we want, Corpac could start using it, either in addition to the current package manager field that it has, or in place of it. Both Corpac and the package manager field, package.json field are experimental, so we can make whatever changes we want. In my mind, the benefit of this is that then from the user's perspective, all of the package managers would behave the same way in the sense that like Corpac does two things. It checks to make sure that the package manager you're running is the correct one for the project. And then if it's not the correct one or it's the incorrect version, it'll download the desired one and run it. What npm is going to do is just do the check part and then error. So if the project says, oh, this is supposed to be a PMPM project, npm will stop. Or if it says, oh, it's supposed to be npm 11 and you're running npm 10, npm will stop. But at least that'll prevent people from running the wrong package manager, and then it's on them to solve it. And if they want to install Corpac to solve it, they can. If they want to get the right package manager in some other way, they can. But at least from the user's perspective, the prevent people from using the wrong thing problem would be solved. So that's in progress, and my ask on the thread on the PR was just to wait until that was finished, so we knew where that was going to land and see if we were going to do the same, and you know, if that would be a significant change, a user-facing change to Corpac. So that's in progress. Oh, and then I guess the other like category of objection is people that object to the like design and architecture of Corpac, that they don't think that Corpac should be like acting as a in between you know, in over top of Yarn and PMPM, where it injects itself to run code before then passing the arguments onto Yarn and PMPM. Like I think that's the essence of the jumper binary objection that the npm team had, and that's the main reason that npm doesn't want to be managed by Corpac. I forget anything, Anton?
Yeah, npm has opted out of being included in Corpac since the beginning.
Okay, now we did want to sort of limit the discussion, you know, because of the ask to defer to next time. I think that's been a pretty good overview, unless there's something else key that either Antoine or Jeffrey want to add before we move on.
Any questions, or am I forgetting anything? Oh, should I mention that alternative proposal? Or is that not relevant? I'll mention it really quickly. There was another, as we were discussing all this, I just threw out a random idea as an issue. I didn't make a PR for it, where like, you know, I was suggesting that we decide what our goals are here, because like if the goal is just that users can install Node and then run the yarn command and it just works, we could just ship a yarn script, like just as we're adding npm as a symlink, we could add a yarn symlink that just runs a script that downloads, say, Corpac first and then downloads yarn and runs it. Or in PMPM's case, if they want to be managed by Corpac, we download Corpac first and run on PMPM, or maybe we just download their thing directly and run it. But you know, we don't have to bundle Corpac in our distribution. We could just have it be downloaded first along, and then it downloads the package manager, and then we kind of get this off our plate. We don't have to deal with, like, we could just unload Corpac completely, let some other project like the Yarn project be the owners of it. We don't have to deal with governing it anymore. And then, but this raises the question that if we're going to install little download scripts for this, why not anything else? Why not TypeScript? Why not ESLint, Bun, whatever? So.
Okay, so yeah, I think at this point, sorry, we really should, like, we don't want to get into the discussion.
Yeah, I just
Trying
want
to walk
to,
that line.
sorry, I just want to understand what is the next step. We need to discuss that, or someone needs to create a POC or something like that.
I think the next
step
Go ahead.
would be if you have some objections, please state them in the PR. I think that's really the next step, and then we can discuss next week with more people, hopefully. It's probably going to end up with the TSC voting on this issue.
Okay, got it.
I would say there's also other next steps in that I think we need to narrow down what our goals are and what our decisions are. Like I've been opening a series of PRs, like, are we trying to unbundle NPM? It seems like the answer is no, et cetera. So I'm trying to narrow down what we're trying to achieve. Like, do we want to be shipping a package manager, version manager? You know, like we could answer some of these. Do we want to be shipping no install necessary binaries for yarn and PM? You know, like we haven't really settled these questions in any way. So that's the other thing we could be doing in the meantime. And I could just keep opening these PRs, or other people can, or you can tell me to stop. I don't know. But if we can reach agreement on like these other questions, I'm hoping that narrows down what we want to do, because like then eventually it should become obvious what we should do, because we've decided what goals we want to achieve.
I missed the beginning of what you said, but just to clarify, my primary confusion here is what are we wanting to achieve, because there isn't consensus in regards to whether we want to remove NPM or not. And are we adding Corpac because we want to eventually removing NPM? And if not, why are we adding Corpac, etc.? So I think I'm very confused of the, over the agreement of overall what is it we're trying to achieve, because everybody seems to be discussing with different, starting points.
I'm gonna have to jump in. I think like I see
sorry.
a few more hands, but like the ask was really that we not get into the discussion. We agreed to have a little bit of a summary, but like all good questions, but like we were asked not to have the discussion this week. So I'll go to Matteo and I'll go to I think other people, but like let's try and respect that ask is kind of where I'm going. Matteo?
I think, trying to clarify the requirements, as well as things where we are not going to bold or move or change. It's good to limit the frame of the conversation. So it's hello, I'm Miles. So as Robert was saying, is there value to have Corpac in Node? Is there value in providing binaries, whatever they will be inside for yarn and PM, okay, inside the node runtime? What I have seen in the like, I think those are important questions. Okay, like what problems are we trying to solve here? Okay, and then from there draw our conclusions. Essentially, it's so I really thank you for Geoffrey for even for the work you've been doing on this front. But again, it's I think we should try to make the decision based on the goal that we want and not the tool that we have. Okay, and then
Right.
if the tool that we have is not the solution to the problem, then swap the tool and they'll develop a new one, or write down what we want, because we never told the Corpac team what we wanted either. So they just did this and they said, is it fine? Yeah, we can include the core. Yeah, good. That's more or less what.
I think based on like what we agreed is like, and what Antoine mentioned, like I think it would be good for somebody to put into that issue, like in GitHub, so that can be discussed between now and the next meeting. But like, I object to this landing until blah blah and blah is done, which could be exactly, Matteo, those things that you've listed, right? Which is we need to have this agreement, we have to this agreement. Like, I think that's kind of like the ask from some of the people involved is like, let's list those out as blocking things.
That's been done. There have been a few comments that list it all out. I mean, it's drowned out in like 50 other comments, but we could create like a separate issue that consolidates it or something. There's also like sorry.
Let's not create another issue.
I know. I mean, this is the thing. I don't know how tell me how like that's the conversation I'd like to have, is what's the process we should use for this? Because if there's a better way, I'm all ears.
Well, the PR has some objections, but please, folks, if you have objections, go ahead and state them. It doesn't matter there are
But,
other objections.
But I think it is fair to say that like no one wants to read a PR with 75 comments on it. So if we can somehow summarize it or something, like, I don't know where to put that, but yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna say like we've already spent way more time than we wanted, like a couple minute summary. So I propose we move on to the next issue. And future
just really quickly before we go, and apologies if this was already touched upon, I want to just ask a question. It's more of a governance one, so I think that this is maybe fair. When we've had more contentious architectural problems in the past, part of the way that this has been solved is through working groups. And I'm not trying to introduce process for the sake of slowing things down, but I actually think that there is one question, and one question alone, that we should be asking before we even move forward on anything, which hasn't really been explicitly stated, is like, is Corpac going to ship unflagged in Node 22? I feel like a lot of the pressure that's happening right now is artificial pressure to get things on the bus in time for 22. And I think that we don't benefit anyone by dragging on a conversation for a long time. We need a yes or no on that. And I don't think it needs to even be a vote. But if overall the sentiment across the TSC or the project is that there is too much ambiguity to meet that deadline, I feel like we could probably release and relieve a lot of the pressure that's building in this pressure cooker, because people won't be like feeling like, oh my God, this decision needs to be made right away. Alternatively, if we think that like, hey, we don't want to debate this incessantly, like, let's make a decision in time for that, that also applies pressure that will force people to like get their shit together and get it done. Now, if we are okay with a longer timeline, I think that this is a great opportunity for a working group or something similar to be put together. We have talked about governance needs for this, which I personally have still not seen come out. How do we make decisions about what package managers come in the future? The discussion right now is split up across like 4 or 5 different issues, and they're all getting heated, and there isn't alignment. There's a lot of othering. There's a lot of like tribalism that's starting to happen, and in groups and out groups. It's brutal. Like, it's really, really toxic for the Node.js project. So and some of the discussion has shifted out to OpenJS to talk about like designing a field, which like that's probably good. But for the sake of the Node.js project and kind of solving like the package manager like problem per se, I think if we answer no, this isn't going to hit the bus in time for 22 because it's too contentious. It really should just be collected in a space with regular meetings and discussions to get through this, because if it just keeps being piecemeal issues and passive aggressive issues to remove stuff or issues to introduce policy here and there, like there's no alignment. It continues to be disjointed and not like a holistically thought through approach to solving something for Node.js.
So I guess Jeffrey, is there something
And
that
I just
we
in the
basically not followed our respected the request to not spend too much time. So if we can
I just quickly add something quick to it? The in the meeting yesterday at the OpenJS meeting, Wesley Todd was there, and he's part of the package maintenance team on Node, and he expressed interest that like that team felt like they should own that like governance around package.json stuff, etc., is kind of what that team is formed to do. So that team is interested.
Okay, Matteo.
Yeah, I genetically agree with Miles, minus one take. Okay, like I think the decision starts at the beginning. Okay, do we want like at some point in the future something like that allows for yarn and PNPM to be binaries to be inside Node.js? Okay, and then bump it down to say there are these ton of objections, figure out a technical solution to this problem. Okay. And delegate that to a working group or a team or something. But we need, before going to that direction, it's to delegate the decision to somebody, to a working group. And we need to make that decision ourselves and give a clear mandate and say, you folks, okay, this is a problem setting, go figure that out. Okay. This is a problem that we want to solve. This is the direction we want to go. Okay. But figure out the technical nit and grit and be all okay with that. Okay. But up until we have decided what we want as a project and we are not in agreement with what we want, then you can't delegate that. Okay. Because otherwise we will end up with a situation where we will need, this team worked for 1 year on something and then it doesn't work. It's not, and then it goes to the TSC and said, no, we don't want that. Goodbye. This is not what we want.
Okay. Again, like we tried to defer the discussion. So like, I propose we move on to the next issue. Okay, thanks. So let's move on to the next one, which is expose and duties proxy agent and set global dispatcher within Node. I don't know who's involved in that, but if you are here and want to jump in.
I think we have discussed that last week, right? And I think some objections were made on the pull request, if I remember correctly.
I see, Matteo, you commented, I think it's time for the TC to make some plans about this one. We'll cover in the Collab Summit. Does that mean that really what is the proposed next steps? Like wait and discuss it in the Collab Summit, or should be something happening between now and then?
These requires a deep dive, I think. Okay, in terms of what we want to do on Undici and this proxy stuff. So it's literally we need to sit down for a deep dive for, I don't know, an hour or two or something, and list down and the possible solution to this problem. So it's essentially go to the room of what would be okay for people, because a few people said, yes, we want to do that. Other people said, no, we don't want to do that. So, and there is a risk on long-term support, exposing a large API surface. There is a lot of things to consider here. So,
so is the proposal though to do that at the Collaborator Summit? Like I could see one path is like, hey, somebody's going to propose a session at the Collaborator Summit. Nothing.
There are already two on Undici, so it's more. There's already one on Undici, so it's more of. Yeah, like that's my thing here is we are trying to figure this out. Okay. Probably there is going to be an Undici There is going to be an Undici session at the Collab Summit. So if people wants to join, they can. And or at least if you don't want for this to happen at all, then you can say something too. Okay. Like this is a problem for people. Okay. Essentially, they want fetch to pass through proxies and respect the proxies one.
Right. So basically, I think like the ask is please join the session at the Collaborator Summit. If you have objections, state those in the issue. I think otherwise we should take it off the TSC agenda until that Collaborator session takes place, at which point it could be re-added if there's like a question to the TSC. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Richard has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to is this likely to be a Semver minor or a Semver major change?
Semver major.
If it's major, then the Collab Summit's not going to leave us a lot of time.
It doesn't matter. Nobody is saying today this need to be going 22. I don't care.
Okay, so yeah, okay. There's no real time pressure on this then.
So I don't think whatever comes out of will be ready for that for 22. Okay. Like this is just minor inconvenience for people, okay?
Mhm.
People that complains to install a module on NPM from NPM, probably they're using the wrong tool if they're using Node, okay? Roughly, okay? And I'm sorry, but this is the hard truth. In order for Node.js to be productive, you need to install modules from NPM. So installing Undici from NPM is not that big of a deal. So I am...
Okay.
That's the gist. And I don't have any other good option here. So, but there is one catch that is important. It's they want to say, like, there are a few different takes on this proxy thing, because in reality they want to configure the proxy, but there is also the proxy something environment variable that has a non-complete syntax, which we might want to say we don't support that. Okay, we're not exposing Undici, we're not exposing anything, we're just supporting that for fetch. Okay, that is also an option. Okay, so
can we check what is possible with other languages? So and technology. So we also use application.
It's one of the things that we need to do. So there is a long issue about this in the Undici repo. So this is
Yeah, let's take it on the summit and we'll bring it up again.
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, this is my
Basically,
take.
I've taken the note that says, like, I took it off the agenda. If based on the summit discussions, it needs to come back on the agenda, somebody can re-add the tag.
Yeah.
Okay, we are running out of time, and I'd like to keep at least 10 minutes for the private section. So I'd like to cover a couple of the ones that we can do quickly. So the CPC representatives, Mateo's volunteered. I don't see any objections or any other volunteers. So I suggest we just consider that we have consensus on Mateo becoming our other CPC rep. And also I mentioned that, like, we agreed in one of the meetings to invite Joe to come to the meeting to give updates so that we have more, Mateo's not here, we'll get Joe coverage and so forth. Any objections, concerns with just moving forward that way? If not, I'll take it off the agenda. Okay, that's a good one. The deep dive for advocacy and promotion that actually happened, lots of good discussion. There'll be some documentation. Maybe I'll put something on the agenda, like to talk about some of those things later on, but for now that comes off the agenda as well. The collaborator summit, is there anything, I think it was mentioned, is there anything we need to cover on that one?
Yes, there is the sign up form. Okay, please go and sign up if you're coming.
Okay, sign up form is up. Please go sign up. Could you add to the minutes the link?
No, but I can do that.
Just add that. Then
I think it should be mentioned. You should fill it if you're coming in person. So folks coming, joining.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're not coming in person, there will be probably a Zoom link opened up.
Perfect. Okay, that's good. That leaves us, I would say, 1 minute for globally installing NPM should not be the recommended way for Mac or Linux. Not sure we have enough time to really get into that discussion. Do people object to deferring that to next time? Okay, so I think that takes us to the end. I do agree that, like, unless there's any really high priority things on the agenda for next week, we should probably reserve the meeting to talk about the core pack. We'll basically say, and I'll put that in the minutes somewhere, that, like, next week, unless there's something that just is so important we can't defer it, we'll just say the whole meeting will be to go through the core pack side of things. That sound good to people as well? Okay. And at that, I'll say then, okay, if everybody can stick around, let's go into a private section where we have a couple of topics. And